Okay, moving on with this here color study. If you look at the previous one, where I was talking about really sort of knowing that the quinacridone rose was going to be too watery and really not be nearly dark enough even for the second step. So yeah, that's definitely what has happened. But once again, I'm going to just sort of try to go along like I'm learning about this stuff as a beginner and thinking, okay, I'll do something that's a little more creamy. And think of it as doing something like that, which is perfectly fine. But as I come back to it eventually to just clarify, and hopefully maybe you already know, and if not, you have the opportunity to know that color gets a lot darker than that. Quinacridone rose, a lot more powerful when it's more concentrated. The Quin Burnt Orange is this dried back a little bit lighter. It's a good example of sort of the previous one. I thought maybe I'd gotten a little too dark, but watercolor dries lighter. Sometimes quite a bit lighter, sometimes way too much lighter. It can be quite annoying. But I think it's worth it. So anyways, I'm going to move on to the yellow. I did switch water. We'll see what happens when I get down to the blue. And try to make a pretty creamy mixture of the yellow. And that's kind of nice. It seems kind of like a the yellow, like I've said a couple times, is really not going to go that dark. Here's something I'm doing. It's probably not on camera, but I am swishing out the paint into just the older bucket of water, so I can have that bucket just be dirty, and then I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit more clean. So when I'm moving on to the next colors, it'll be cleaner. Let's see. Got some not great lighting going on here, but I'm grabbing some peacock blue and sort of go for the third swatch for this one and try to make it pretty creamy. And see what happens, yeah. Do like that color. But similar to pretty much everything that's going on here, I'm familiar enough to know that it can get quite a bit darker. So I'm sure I'll end up having another fun go at this. So let's do the indigo and something that's seems creamier. Ooh, that's a bit darker, huh? That's a big jump. And same sort of thing, just mostly trying to get familiar with just how much these colors, how dark and intense they can go when you build them up in layers, and how some of them, regardless of how many layers and how creamy, are only going to get so dark, like the yellow. So while I have your attention, I think I'm gonna just start adjusting right now, because I'm having fun and I'm gonna keep painting. So really, this square could really kind of be the middle square for the, and I may actually come back and intensify that quinacridone burnt orange, but I have this mixed now. So I'm gonna do a pretty juicy, somewhere between juicy and creamy. Hopefully this doing it in this sort of sequence is not confusing you too much. But it's really testimony to trusting your eyes and building up the paint in a way that you can adjust, and you are familiar with the colors, so you can adjust accordingly. And starting off and not being familiar with just how intense these colors can go is to be expected. One of the things I consistently hear is about my watercolor painting is comments about the intensity and saturation of the color being very, very atypical of what people think of as watercolor. Since I have your attention and since I'm here, I'm gonna come back and make even a creamier layer on the quinacridone burnt orange. I suppose eventually you can get to the place where somehow you're just painting straight paint from the tube. I don't think of it that way, but I do think of it as getting more and more concentrated, but still having enough water to flow around, and building up that in combination with multiple layers gives you quite a wide spectrum of availability. And So here's a final thing I will often do when you're probably not picking that up on camera, but I just squeezed a nice little dollop of paint into that last third quinacridone burnt orange. And it's having a hard time moving around, but it's slowly doing it. I could add a little bit more water if I wanted to, or I could just kind of see, because I know I made it somewhat damp, just kind of see what the amount of water that's in there will do. It's definitely not moving towards the edges. Using a really light touch here, really kind of just almost skimming across the water and pulling it without really even touching the paper almost. So that I will say, I'm curious how that dries, but hopefully that will dry in a way that makes it clear that, wow, that's a lot darker than I thought it could be. But I'm going to move on to where I was going with the yellow here, and knowing that even though this is not going to get a lot darker, I could still squeeze in some more color to that swatch and build up a concentration of the azo yellow that will have that will be more intense. And so I know that the middle one is going to be able to be more intense as well. If I'm going to make try to keep it in equal steps. We'll see about the yellow. Yellow is tricky because of the fact that it doesn't keep getting darker the more concentrated it is. Let's see, I'm going to come back to my second peacock blue here, because I know that peacock blue is going to get much nicer and darker than that. I'm not sure why. And even that is not thrilling me. I'm going to get a little bit even creamier. Not saving really concentrated for that one, but I am gonna put a little bit more creamier color in there. That's interesting. When I squeeze like that, I could tell that there was a little bit of yellow still in that brush. But I'm going to go with it. Thirsty brush there. These guys are still drying, so I don't think I want to come back in and do an additional third layer on those. Some definitely building up, going up here. I'm going to be curious to what that's going to dry like. I'm going to do the same thing for the indigo, and then I know that, like the others, has a lot of potential for getting even darker. So I'm going to try to find, I'm grabbing a little bit of water there. I was wanting to make this definitely a little bit darker to set myself up for it being a equal step. For when I have an actual darker pass at that one, at the third one. I'm going to soak some of this up here. Nice. I'm going to let that dry. See you in the next one.